The good old unrequited love poem, though I very highly doubt uh, unrequited love poems ever get quite so famously unrequited as this. We will have a bit of the history of the poem in this video, but there are some other things to talk about too. The poem in Welcome to Strip Cover Lit, where we squeeze the bigger picture out of literature. I'm Adrian Fort, and we're here for another poetry discussion, which will appear, of course, in the poetry discussion playlist here on the channel, now cruising towards 700 videos strong. The poem in question today, When You Are Old by W.B. Yeats. And if you hear that title and you think, wow, that's not going anywhere nice, you would be correct. The poem reads as such. When you are old and gray and full of sleep and nodding by the fire, take down this book and slowly read and dream of the soft look your eyes had once and of their shadows deep. How many loved your moments of glad grace and loved your beauty with love false or true? But one man loved the pilgrim soul in you, and loved the sorrows of your changing face. And, bending down beside the glowing bars, murmur, a little sadly, how love fled and paced upon the mountains overhead, and hid his face amid a crowd of stars. Woof! Right? So, I mentioned famously, right? Apparently, this poem is written to slash about slash for a woman named Maud Gonne. Maud Gonne. I don't know exactly how the Irish is pronounced there. Irish, by the way, if you've not looked into it, some extremely odd pronunciations. Interesting, I guess I should say. As a Midwestern American, I should say interesting. But who was Maud Gonne? Well, she was an Irish activist, suffragette, and actress. So very, very famous in her country at the time. She turned down Yeats' marriage proposal reportedly several times. And she said at the time, the world would thank her because it would make Yeats an even greater poet, which would feel like quite the kick in the pants. Um, the world would thank her, but I'm sure Yeats would have preferred a much more William Butler focused answer. Now, this, I guess I should have scrolled down. This is Maud Gonne. Very strong looking face there. Very Southern belle hair. That's how we would view that hair in the United States. But I'm sure that this is a classic Irish beauty. So let's go back to the poem and look at what it is we're talking about. When you were old and gray and full of sleep and nodding by the fire, take down this book and slowly read and dream of the soft look your eyes had once and of their shadows deep. Basically saying, look forward to when you were old and your looks and your youth have gone. At that time, read this book, this poem, and remember, just remember. And in stanza 2, how many loved your moments of glad grace and loved your beauty with love false or true. But one man loved the pilgrim soul in you and loved the sorrows of your changing face. Basically, it's easy to love you now, and many do because of your personality and your looks. But you'll have to remember that I loved the fighter in you, that pilgrim soul. What a phrase. One man loved the pilgrim soul in you. in the final stanza. And bending down beside the glowing bars, murmur a little sadly how love fled, and paced upon the mountains overhead, and hid his face amid a crowd of stars. And at that time, when you're older and, less lovable, not nearly as lovable, you'll have to remember while you're stoking that fire to keep warm, you'll have to have a fire to keep warm, baby, because you won't have this love. When you're stoking that fire to keep you warm, you squelched the fire that I had for you. Also, I loved your sadness. I did. Um, Not a lot of people, I think. I think that this is something that gets murmur a little sadly how love fled. Um, I think a lot of the concentration on this poem is put here. So this is a reference to building a fire. A lot of the heat is put up here. When you were old and gray. I really like this line. Murmur a little sadly how love fled. I think that what it does is I think that it is something that gives a 3D nature to the subject of this poem that would be easy to keep in a 2D, look what you did to me nature. And then, obviously, and hid his face amid a crowd of stars. So, part of the reason I want to bring attention to the murmur a little sadly how love fled is because of that highlighted phrase just a few lines before it. Pilgrim soul. Remember that I loved the pilgrim soul in you. I loved the fighter in you. I loved that pure moxie that you had. That was part of what I loved in you. It wasn't how beautiful you are. It wasn't your personality. I loved the fighter that you are. And then shortly thereafter, when you're old and you murmur a little sadly how love fled, it's saying the reason I think that brings a 3D nature to this subject is that it's taking the piss out of her, right? I don't know a whole lot about Maud Gonne, right? Basically, all I know about Maud Gonne is what she looked like and what I read to you. But someone who's possibly, especially at this time, going to be an Irish activist had to be full of moxie. You've heard the phrase, the fighting Irish. This individual loved for her pilgrim soul, taken down to the level of building a fire to keep warm and murmuring sadly to herself. That tells a full story in here. Now, is it egotistical from our speaker to say, maybe losing this love will be what breaks you? Yeah, sure it is. Is it hopeful? Right? I think that is an interesting question with this poem. Is our speaker attempting to be prophetic? Is our speaker attempting to be snide? Is our speaker speaking with some sense of schadenfreude, some sense of, I want to see you fall? Because I don't know if I catch that here. I think that this is a genuine emotion from our speaker. Our speaker is not saying, I don't think our speaker is saying, because you have turned me down, I am going to revel in the fact that when you're old and alone and building fires to keep warm, you will murmur sadly to yourself. I don't get our speaker reveling in that. I think that this, if anything, it seems to me that our speaker has, okay, does our speaker then say, I'm going to get me mine? Does our speaker ever intimate that his love will still be found? Maybe it's not you, baby, but I'll find me a somebody. No, I think that what is happening largely in this poem is that our speaker is recognizing this future might await us both. Me, the speaker, because I'm not going to go for anyone else. And you, the subject, because who else will love your pilgrim soul? Others will love your looks. They will love your personality. But who will love the fighter in you? And because I'm just the poet and you're just the fighter, if we do not make this connection, likely our connections will be done. We will have no more options. We will both end up alone. I will be hiding in the mountains, and you will be building a fire, and we will be alone. That is what I have for this poetry discussion. If you like or appreciate what it is that I do here, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other literature lovers. If you find yourself here by chance but not design, literature is the only thing I talk about on this channel, dropping multiple videos every single week. And as always, I hope to have you back for the next one.